All right. Again, good Friday afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the fourth in this series, the Behind the Numbers series, from data to dashboards. Today's session is focused on the Accountability Index Estimator Tool that we have available for you. As you've seen, we've been releasing several of the accountability indicators over the last few weeks, and a few more are in a preview stage, as many of you know, and all remaining ones are also being actively worked on. So we're trying to be as responsive and timely as possible with these calculations, and accurate, of course. At the same time, I know you're probably looking at that summative rating that we have for all schools and districts, the accountability index, which is the overall score based on all the indicators. So this session is really designed to help you use the data that we've released to begin to sort of estimate where that accountability index may land as we finalize and release all the accountability information. So this is sort of to help you get a preview yourselves and estimate where that summative rating might land. So again, I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague Renee Savoy and Danielle Bousquet from the Performance Office. But to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Renee to walk us through the remainder of the session, and I'll come back on a little bit later.
Thanks, Ajit. So the session agenda today, we are going to talk about the indicator data that's already publicly available that Ajit had referred to, and then also what is available securely for review. So not public yet, but is going public pretty soon. And then kind of what's outstanding and what will be coming soon. And we'll talk a little bit about how those indicators contribute to a school's overall accountability index. So if you're on the line and you are thinking that you really have no idea where the accountability index is going to land, I think this session is going to help you see that you're pretty close to knowing exactly what that report's going to look like, even though we are a ways out from doing the official accountability release as a whole. I'm going to go through some preview reports that are currently available to EdSight secure users. I'll give you some screenshots of those. We'll talk about what you can learn from them. And then finally, the focus of this session is on this estimator tool that we have. Danielle actually created it. It's an Excel calculator. It has lots of rules and conditions in it. So you should be able to get pretty close to what we think your overall accountability index is going to be. We'll demo that and we'll talk about some of the limitations and information that is still forthcoming moving forward. So what's already available? You'll see quite a few indicators here are already publicly available. I sent around a PDF of this presentation to everyone with a reminder that the meeting was coming up at 1 o'clock. So you have this slide deck if you were pre-registered. And you can actually click on the links next to each indicator to see exactly where that information is available on EdSight Public. So none of this is just, secure users only. It's all completely public. And look at those release dates. I think we're doing a really good job of moving more quickly each year so that we can get information to you sooner and sooner. So we had one indicator that was out as early as June, and then we have indicators that just became available this week. Those that are under review right now in EdSight Secure, this is hot off the presses. We put out an announcement on September 5th that these were available. So these are new to me too, I can tell you that. Indicator 5, 7, and 12, which are based all on June PSIS, and the teacher course student data collection. If you have attended any of the Behind the Number sessions that we had last spring, then if you went to session 1, you heard a lot about these 3 indicators and sort of the intricacies of the calculations and the data sources and how we get that information from you. There is a link to that session recording in the very end of this slide deck that I sent previously. I'm not going to get really into the weeds of the calculations and the nuances because that session does a good job of covering those details. But we're going to take a look at the preview reports and what's available to you now for these 3 indicators. The timeline is all laid out here as far as when changes can be made and what the deadlines are and what the schedule is for refreshing the preview reports in EdSight Secure. So that information is here just for your knowledge. It was also in the September 5th announcement. So when you go, if you are an EdSight Secure user and you have access to these preview reports, you're going to sign into EdSight Secure. This is the landing page that I see when I sign in as a secure user. And that link right at the top, that new link, TCS Accountability Indicators Preview Report, is where you're going to go to see what we have for you right now for indicators 5, 7, and 12. So the indicator 5 preview, this is the post-secondary preparation indicator. And you'll notice this is a screenshot from an actual district's report. I have redacted the district name and the school name, and down in the student level data portion of the slide at the bottom, I've removed the personally identifiable information, but now you at least get a feel for what this report looks like. And so remember, indicator 5 is the percentage of students in grades 11 and 12 participating in at least one of the following during high school. So we're looking for the 2 courses in the AP, IB, or dual credit umbrella world area, or 2 CTE courses and one of the career clusters, or 2 workplace experience courses. So students have lots of different ways to show success on this measure. And remember, we're looking at grades 11 and 12 kids, but we're looking at their high school experience. So all that course taking during high school. So the denominator in this report, in this CCR course taking year comparison that you see kind of in the middle of the page, the denominator is going to be all of your 11th and 12th graders. And of course, this is going to vary depending on if you're looking at a district or you're looking at a particular school. And then the numerator is going to be the count of students who met those standards that I had mentioned previously. And what's nice about this report is it gives you an idea of how different is your 22-23 data when compared to what was submitted in 21-22. And here you see this particular school has a 2.3 percentage point difference from a prior year. So no big red flag. We're going to see another report in a coming slide that's going to be in red. We highlight that when there's a big difference. And that just means, doesn't mean it's wrong, but it means that you probably need to take a closer look and make sure that the data that have been submitted make sense and are accurate. So we've got the comparison there. And then down at the bottom in the student level data section, I like this because you can see whether or not the student met the criteria. Notice that indicator 5 met criteria right in the middle there. If you see a 1 there next to a student, that means they met the criteria. And then further on to the right in the columns that are on the right-hand side, you see how they met it. So a student can meet it in multiple ways. This first student that's listed that I've redacted, this student actually met the AP IB dual enrollment criteria, so they have a 1. And they also met the CTE criteria, again, another 1. The student below that only met it on CTE, good enough. That's what we're looking for indicator 5. So this hopefully will give you some insight into where those data are coming from that we report publicly for indicator 5 in the accountability report. And I think I can pause here for questions on indicator 5 before I go on to indicator 7, if there are any.
I don't see any questions in the chat, Renee, or any hands raised.
Okay, I'm glad you're watching that because it's hard for me to look at both things. I appreciate that. Indicator 7. This one is a little more nuanced, and if you attended again that behind the numbers session back in the spring, we really went quite into detail. Actually, Danielle did into the indicator 7 calculation, and it gets a little complicated when you're looking at the calculation at the district level versus the school level. The link on this slide to understanding the indicator 7 preview report, that's a resource in EdSight Secure that really takes you through the calculations step by step and gives you some real examples. I would urge you to check that out. And in this screen is actually just a screenshot from that preview report guide. So again, this is fictitious data. Notice that up at the top here, we've got denominators of 14 and 17. These are whole districts, obviously fictitious. So the indicator 7 is telling us the percentage of ninth graders who are earning at least 6 full year credits in the year. And we are reporting indicator 7, obviously at the high school level. So what is the success rate at the end of grade 9 for a school? But this particular indicator also gets attributed back to the middle school where those ninth graders came from. That's where it gets a little tricky. But this report that's available in EdSight Secure, I think will help you unravel a little bit of that mystery and see where the numbers are coming from. So up at the top, I mentioned that when you've got a big difference in data from one year to the next, we put a flag there. So in this case, and with this particular district, they were at 47.1% on track at the end of 21-22. And for this past year, it appears that they have increased that rate to 64.3%. So with a 17.2 percentage point difference, that generates this red flag that we want you to take a closer look to ensure that the data that are being reported for 22-23, or what's slated to be reported, is actually accurate. And there is, again, still time to make these changes, which is excellent. We are obviously the on-track percentage is going to be the on-track count divided by the total denominator, the total count of students in ninth grade. If we're looking at a school, looking at a high school. The other kind of nice flexible piece of these preview reports is that you can sort the columns. You're going to see when you go into the secure reports that a lot of them have these like little triangles at the top of the columns where you see Alice Anderson and Bo Brown. You can sort by name, you can sort by SACID, but you can also filter based on year and grade. You can search by a last name, you can search by SACID. So it should be a pretty flexible tool for you to be able to double check your data before it goes public. Are there questions about the indicator 7 preview report before we move on to indicator 12?
There are, Renee, and I'm gonna.
Okay.
There's a
I hear
couple
lots
that
of
have come
dinging.
in. Danielle and I have been kind of handling some of these questions, but
Okay.
there's one here from Anne who says, did you say 6 credits for indicator 7?
I did.
Yeah. Yep. And that changed from 5 credits to 6 credits to line up with the change in the graduation requirements for total credits. That change happened with the 21-22 accountability release of results for indicator 7. And there's also another question here. I think, Danielle, you sort of answered it by, this was from Dave, I think, where you can export the student level data and view it. Isn't it also true that you can double click on the cell itself and it pulls up a student level table from the top summary? That doesn't happen on this particular one? Okay, maybe I'm...
Well, the student level summaries are at the bottom. So...
but, okay. Okay, great. No worries. Appreciate that clarification. And Stephanie, you can email us after this call, and we'd be happy to jump on for an offline conversation about your particular cases. I believe you're referring to a part-time magnet, which I think that's the part-time magnet. So we could talk about that.
If I could just mention one thing, sorry, I was answering questions, so Renee may have said this, and if so, I'm sorry, it's worth emphasizing. If you have students who were in your district or school for 8th grade only, you will see their results in that table in the middle with the colors. They will not appear in your student level data because we can't tell you anything about students who are not currently yours, right? So we can't give you that. But if they will appear in that middle level table, so if you see that, and it's kind of small, but that grade 8 only column, so you can see how many were on track or how many were not on track. but you can't they will not appear in your student level table. So if you're missing those students, that's why.
And I do think that's in the understanding the preview report, correct, Danielle? I seem to remember reading that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's a really helpful resource when trying to understand what you're seeing on this preview report when you're in EdSight Secure. Okay, I'm going to move on to indicator 12. This one is probably the easiest indicator to understand. I think in the first behind the numbers session, we started with indicator 12 because it is just so straightforward. Again, I have redacted the district and school name on this particular report, and you won't see any SASs or student level information, but you'll see it for your school and for your district when you go into EdSight Secure. So indicator 12 is the percentage of students in grades 9 through 12 who in that given year are taking one or more dance, theater, musical, visual arts, or media arts courses. So it's just in that school year. While some of our indicators are cumulative across all of high school, this is just a one-year snapshot, which makes it really straightforward to understand. In this particular case, we have 67% of the high school students are taking one or more arts courses in the year. And that is a 5 percentage point difference when compared to the prior year. So not a big difference, not flagged, but again, still worth taking a look to make sure that everybody is accounted for. And you'll see the students, you're going to see every student listed that was in your June PSIS. You're going to have their grade level, and you're going to have whether or not they met the criteria. So pretty straightforward. Numerator is the number of students taking the courses, taking those arts courses. Denominator is your whole grade 9 through 12 population to get your percentage arts access. Any questions about indicator 12 and the preview report? Okay, moving right along. So you can see whether it's publicly available or securely available currently and under review, the lion's share of the indicators in the accountability system are out and available to you. The two indicators that aren't yet ready are indicator 6, which is post-secondary readiness. This is the percentage of grade 11 and 12 students who have met the established benchmark scores on the ACT, the SAT, IB, or AP. And as of 21-22 accountability, we also consider as a measure of success if a student has earned 3 or more non-remedial college credits prior to graduation. So that's what indicator 6 is. And as you can imagine, we have to figure out who those 11th and 12th graders are with June PSIS. Okay, done, check. But then we also have to get the assessment files from all of the different vendors because we get these data files from an external source. We don't get them from schools and districts. And then we also need to, or Danielle needs to, I won't say we, gets records directly from the institutions of higher ed and has to do a lot of matching to ensure that the records that they're providing about credits awarded to students in Connecticut high schools is matching up with PSIS, that everything is clean, and that we're giving credit where we need to give credit. So that process is underway currently and will take a little more time before we get to the actual official reporting of indicator 6. And then indicator 10 is the percentage of the graduating class that enters a 2 or 4 year post-secondary institution within 1 year of graduation. Again, we are getting a data file from an external source from the National Student Clearinghouse. And I think Danielle talked about this in a previous behind the numbers session. There is a lot of cleaning and a lot of matching that has to happen when we're taking an external data file, such as the National Student Clearinghouse file, and trying to match it up with our records. And I think she does an excellent job of getting really dead-on matches. We have great accuracy, but it takes time. And so again, that's why indicator 10 is not quite available yet. But I think you'll see when we look at the overall impact of these different indicators on a school's accountability index, that the two outstanding indicators, 6 and 10, impact schools with typical high schools, 9 through 12 schools, or 8 through 12 or 7 through 12 or school like that, like a middle high school. And it's really less than 10% of a school's overall accountability index that is sort of in question. If you are in elementary school, all of your indicators have been publicly reported. If you are a middle school, everything except for indicator 7 is publicly reported, and you have preliminary information and secure reports for indicator 7. So you have a really good handle on what that overall accountability index is going to be and what your report is going to look like. So you can prepare now for the discussions that will ultimately come when this is all publicly released. So we've got this accountability estimator tool. It's actually been on EdSight for a while, but we kind of did a refresh and we wanted to get the word out about it because I don't think it was something that was used very frequently. If you go to the next generation accountability section of EdSight and you go down to the bottom, there are a bunch of related links. The Accountability Estimator Tool is posted there. So that's where you're going to find the Excel that Ajit is going to walk us through and show us how to use, depending on our grade ranges. Before we do that, do we have questions that we need to address?
There's one question from Stephanie and Cindy. Does entrance into a 2- or 4-year college require an associate's or bachelor's degree track, or can it be certification in a 2-year college? It can be certification. We have seen in the data actually that students in certification track are coming to us. I think the key from the college's perspective is that they tend to need to be credit-bearing courses on a certification track. And there are several of our community colleges that have those types of certification programs that have certain number of credits associated with it. Typically, those are the courses that the colleges end up sending to the National Student Clearinghouse. And I put the link to the post-secondary outcomes dashboard. I know Leslie Carson asked about whether you can get a district or a school level report. The dashboard that I put out there actually allows you to disaggregate on several metrics, college, not just the accountability indicator of college entrance 1 year after. You can actually track college persistence, which is freshman to sophomore persistence. You can also look at college degree completion in 4 years and 6 years by graduating class. And so it's a pretty powerful report. So do take a look. And we are also contemplating providing student level data back to districts. It's a little more complicated for us with the National Student Clearinghouse. And I know some of you have asked about that in the past, so that we can actually give back to you at a kid level, which of your students actually went and who didn't enroll and so on by graduating class. But it's not immediate, but it is something on our plan. So we will be at some point able to act on that as well. All right. So I don't think there's any other unanswered questions. So Renee, I think I can move to the demonstration piece.
Yep,
You good?
I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Okay. You can see the screen, I take it?
Yes.
There is seeing a hand raise, but I don't see who's not sure who's raising their hand. Okay, I think I'll begin with the demonstration. So the place where this file is located, Renee showed to you in that slide. It's if you go to the next generation accountability dashboard, and if you scroll all the way down, there is this related links, and this is there. I've basically opened up that link and saved it as an Excel file. There's a notes tab, which I'll come to in just a second, but I want to actually show you the template itself. So I'm gonna see if I can maybe enlarge the size so that it's, for those of you on smaller monitors, maybe this is a little easier to see. So what the file's pretty basic, but Danielle did a great job in building a lot of logic in here that actually makes it a smart file. It first asks you to select the grade range for the district or school that you're trying to estimate. So let's say it's a elementary school pre-K through 5. So you pick the minimum grade and the maximum grade. And you notice automatically it blocks out certain indicators that are not applicable for that grade range. Now, if I were to select pre-K through 12, all the indicators would come into play. But let me start with pre-K through 5 for purposes of illustration here. And you'll notice here that you have the full table here and the accountability index at the bottom. If you go to the legacy report for the accountability, the next gen report, you'll basically see this type of tabular report. And again, Renee has shown you where all these indicators are, the data for all these indicators. So basically, if you want to estimate what your overall summative rating will be for your school or district, you can just download this, and you're basically just putting in the numbers. So I'm gonna invent some numbers here. I'm putting in basically for ELA performance index all students high needs, math all students high needs. And then the science indicator. And there's safeguards built into this, so if you have an index that's over 75, and that's okay, you'll notice that you won't get more than 50 points, and the percent point earns won't exceed 100. So it's savvy enough to handle that. I'll revert it back to the value I'd entered. You enter your growth numbers for all students and high needs for ELA and math. And then your English language proficiency from the last links assessment. You enter those growth measures, and those are also available on EdSight Public for both oral and literacy. And then your chronic absenteeism rates for all students in high needs. You notice that as I'm entering, right, this accountability index on the bottom is calculating dynamically. And if you don't have a particular value, which happens in some cases where you have, you don't have a subgroup for reporting. So let's say you don't have an ELA or sometimes the science high needs, because that's usually one grade is where we see some missing data. So if you remove that, then that gets excluded from the overall calculation. You'll notice that the max points will change and the points earned will change. And so the last two remaining here are chronic absenteeism. So I will put in the chronic absenteeism rates. And it's hard to make a mistake here. So if you type in, for example, a comma instead of or you type in a character, it won't let you enter it. So you don't have to worry. You can, just type in the numbers. And in this case, because there's a percent, I'm going to have to redo this. And there we go. And so I've done all these entries, and there's your accountability index. What we're missing is the physical fitness. So in the case of physical fitness, remember there's a multiplier based on the estimated participation rate. And this too is available on the recently released physical fitness dashboard that Stephanie and Danielle worked along with Ray Martin and others in the office to design this beautiful dashboard. And right on the headline metric, you could see the participation rate as well. So you first put in the fitness rate, and then you put in the multiplier for the participation rate. Presumably it's at least 90%. So you put in the 1, and there's your accountability index. The shading, anything less than 70 is shaded in orange. And this is, by the way, explained in the notes section. You'll see that here. It's explained. And it sort of lines up with the school category breakouts that we have for the overall accountability index. If it's 85 and up, then it's in darker blue. If it's between 70 and 85, it's in that lighter blue. And then in the orange below 70. And if you're entering for a pre-K 8, now you get the on track to high school graduation measure that comes up, and you can put that in. And now I'm obviously leveraging the same example because I don't want to have to retype these numbers for you on the session. So, and there's the updated accountability index. And if this were a high school, obviously you would have all the indicators in play, and then you'd be able to enter all of that as well. So I think I hope this gives you a sense of what the different how this particular tool works, and I think it's important and hopefully helpful as you're playing with this, as you're estimating with this, that you see the relationship, because there's a lot of things at play here, right? You obviously have the rate for each indicator. You also have a distance to target factor that's going on. And you know that different things are weighted differently, right? I mean, I think Renee was pointing that out when she said, you've got these two indicators left, post-secondary entrance and post-secondary readiness. Those are the two indicators. And you see that out of 1,400, in this example, 150 of those points are there. So those two indicators alone aren't going to move the accountability index a lot. And I think that's the important interplay you get to see between the different indicators and that overall summative rating, the accountability index, with this particular tool. So hopefully that sort of gives you the ability to sort of see that interplay and sort of play around with it. Clearly we don't have yet the post-secondary readiness or the post-secondary entrance, and depending on the size of the school or the district, sometimes those metrics do fluctuate. If you have many more 11th and 12th grade students, 500, 600 students in those two grades, then the metric tends to fluctuate less. If you have fewer students, then that metric tends to fluctuate more. So, when you're estimating sort of what you want to use there as sort of estimates, just keep that in mind, that the n sizes, and you can look at your own past data, and see where you have trended pre-pandemic and also where you were last year, because especially for indicator 6, we added that whole dual credit data last year. So that was a change that we made. And typically for across the board, we tended to see higher indicator 6 rates once we made that change, because we were now giving credit for students who may not have passed an exam, AP, IB, SAT, whatever, but they did earn 3 credits, non-remedial credits with a C or better, and so they were getting credit in that realm. So you can obviously estimate what those values would be and see how your accountability index might change depending on where they land. So I think that that at least covers what I was hoping to share. But before I turn off the screen, I wanted to know if there were any questions. And Renee and Danielle, if you wanted to add anything to this and maybe perhaps missed something here.
I think I'll just reiterate something that you said, because I think it bears repeating, and that is the weighting of the indicators. I've had so many conversations with individuals who are thinking that some indicators are worth a lot more in the overall system and have a greater impact than they really have. So this tool is a good way to have those conversations about, what are the indicators that are really going to move that overall accountability index. We know in elementary schools it's growth. In middle schools it's growth as well. And chronic absenteeism has a pretty big impact as well. So I think it's a helpful tool, not only for estimating what this year's reports are going to look like, but for maybe establishing goals for the future and inputting those targets that you're making for your own school or district and seeing where that would land you in future years.
I see Jennifer's question about where to find indicator 2, and Danielle posted the link. I just wanted to also show that if you go to performance and smarter balanced, you'll actually see additional reports, and there's the growth report for smarter balanced that actually covers indicators 2A through 2D. You can also go to performance and then last links, And then you'll see the lost links growth as an additional report. So don't forget these additional reports. There's a bunch. I mean, if you go to Smarter Balanced, you'll notice you have the growth. You also have the rough cohort and the bubble chart. I mean, there's lots here just on the public side. And this is a standardization that Stephanie and others have led is this whole focus on standard user interface, which makes it really easy to see all the additional reports. There's tons of reports that are available in almost every area. Yeah, even if you go to discipline, you'll notice that while we start off with one report, there are other reports available. So don't miss out on those additional reports. I see Holly's question. Good question, Holly, on the achievement gap and the graduation rate gap, because those are both part of the overall accountability report. They're not part of the estimator, clearly. And those are relative measures because they're based on the distribution of all the schools. So it is not here yet, but it will be there when the full release is done. And as we did with the state assessment release this past couple of weeks ago, when we released all of our assessment information, including growth, we will have districts get a preview. I can't tell you how long that preview will be, but you will absolutely have the ability to see it in advance of us putting it out to the press. So you'll get a preview, be able to see it. And again, I think hopefully what this session is showing is that you already have probably 80% of the data that's going to feed into that now. And yes, the minimum n size, as with anything else, is a denominator of 20. So for the growth measure, we need to have at least 20. Oh, thank you, Danielle. You jumped in there. Great.
So back to the slides, Ajit.
Sure. You can just start sharing.
Yep.
Yeah, and Aretha, the way the system works is if you don't have a particular indicator, then that indicator is not considered. If you remember when I was showing the Excel, I think it was chronic absenteeism, I removed the high needs, or maybe it was science high needs achievement, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So when I removed the science high needs, the accountability index just excludes that indicator and calculates the accountability index for all available indicators. So it's just whatever we can reasonably and defensively report, that's what is used for the overall accountability index.
And those are the values that you're going to see reported publicly on EdSight too. So if it's publicly reported on EdSight, you can put that number into the accountability estimator. If it's not publicly reported, then it's not going to be available for you in the final reports. So what is still to come? Well, we know indicators 6 and 10 are still to come, but what other information is not captured by the estimator tool? And Holly actually got at some of this. So school categories are not captured. And while school categories are, the first slice at school categories is based on your overall accountability index with categories 1, 2, and 3. But remember that there are sort of guardrails built into the system so that if a school doesn't meet the participation rate standard or has an outlier achievement gap or an outlier graduation rate gap, that can impact the school's category. So that information is separate and outside of the tool. Also, turnaround and focus school exit decisions and whether or not those schools have met a year of or earned a year of credit toward exit, that we don't know either, because again, that's a relative measure. And we don't have those calculations complete yet. We do identify new focus schools annually. I know we sort of got out of a rhythm because of COVID, but we're back on track. So we'll have new focus schools identified with this release. And that, again, is not part of this. But that is based on, for schools that are elementary and middle schools, we're looking at growth. And we're looking for focus schools, we're looking at consistently low growth. So you have a handle on where your growth has been and where it is this year. So you get a little bit of insight into that. And then finally, schools of distinction. Again, that is a relative measure and won't be finalized until we do the official accountability reporting. So there are still pieces that we don't have yet, but the standard legacy report, we have most of that information available, and you can start to digest and understand it and be ready to communicate about it when the official release happens. And it looks like we have a question about decisions around exiting turnaround and focus schools and timelines for that.
Yeah, basically mentioned in there that those decisions will also be made at time of the accountability release. And as with overall decisions, overall results, accountability results, any schools that are newly identified and any schools that exit, we try to give that school and the superintendent a heads up in advance of the public release, because we don't want districts to be surprised if a school is either identified or exits. We obviously want you to know ahead of that public release. So we will let you know whether, if it exits, we'll let you know. And if it doesn't exit, or if it's newly identified, we'll also let you know.
So I would just go back to something I know we've mentioned a few times during this session, and that is the 3 prior sessions that we had at the end of last school year. I think they're really great resources. I find them helpful myself, and I work on this project daily. So I think that there's a lot of information to be learned through those recordings. So I have it here again for you. I will also encourage you that if there is content that you think you'd like us to present about in the future, we would love to hear that. We want to make these sessions useful to you. And so we don't always know what it is you're most in need of understanding. So our contact information is on the last slide. Feel free to reach out to any of us. If you have corrections that are going to need to be made or updates that need to be made to TCS, Corinne is your contact there. And I guess we can see if there are any other questions before we wrap up.
And you can also raise your hand, and we can try to unmute you as well if you want to ask your question orally. That's also an option. All right. I don't think we're getting any questions. You know how to get a hold of us. The recording will be made available probably in sometime next week. It just takes a little bit of time to clean it up, get the transcription all worked out and posted. But it will be added to that YouTube channel and the Behind the Numbers playlist. I posted a link to that as well. So we will continue to provide these types of sessions to support. And yeah, appreciate all the kind words in the chat. And if there's, looks like we're all set, Renee. I don't think there's any other questions, so we can wrap up.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Here, bye-bye.